This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Let's see. Oh, here we go. All right, Bruce, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, well, you can bring up that first slide. So my name is Bruce Corto. I'm a senior energy consultant with Efficiency Vermont. And thank you for having us by today. So we can advance to the next slide. So this is us, statewide energy efficiency utility. We are here to help everyone in the state of Vermont who are ratepayers to reduce their energy costs. That would include families, businesses, institutions, businesses, both residential and commercial businesses. And the whole idea is to better use energy and reduce greenhouse gases. So you can advance the slide. So here's what we've been up to for the last 20 years, saved $3 billion in lifetime savings, 13 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, 2.8 million cars, 38% lower energy savings on electric bills, which is actually pretty significant because Vermont has some of the highest electric rates in the country. There's a number of jobs that have been sort of put together through the efficiency energy efficiency jobs. And that 482 is the number of sort of different contractors and different people who are in our sort of network. So you could advance the slide. And so actually, I just need to, there we go. So this is sort of what we're going to cover briefly, you know, and as we work through the slides, you'll sort of see what each of these sort of refers to. So you can go ahead and advance the slide. So these are sort of different people who we work with and who are accessible to all of us. And once you can go ahead and advance the slide because a lot of this is just sort of, so here's us efficiency. There you go. Yeah. So this is us along with the other efficiency utilities, which would be Burlington Electric and Green Mountain VG Gas. And we have rebates and incentives. We're the hub for information, and that's the Efficiency Vermont's number right there. So you could go ahead and advance the slide. Your utilities are also involved here. They have incentives right now as well. And in our website, if you go to our web site and you look at our incentive page, usually there's a little note there that says, yes, check with your utility as well. You can go ahead and advance the slide. So we work with a couple of credit unions we buy down interest rates for energy loans. And those rates are both for weatherization and for products. So that would be something that really helps us to move work along when we're trying to encourage people to make changes. So you can go ahead and advance the slide. And this is our network of contractors. They're sort of vetted. They work under our umbrella. If you work with those contractors, then you get access to our incentives and our loan buy down products. You can advance the slide. And then there's the local stores. You know, we help to promote energy efficiency products. We also have a marketplace on our website, which shows different products and, you know, the more efficient products whenever you're looking to upgrade appliances. You can advance the slide. And these are the weatherization organizations throughout the state of Vermont, income eligible weatherization. We actually refer people to those on a regular basis if they do in fact fit those income guidelines, or if they don't know whether they fit those guidelines. And so the sort of the first stop whenever we speak with people is to see if they meet those guidelines. You can go ahead and advance the slide. So the idea of weatherization and the whole, you know, the idea of, you know, making our homes more efficient. So you can advance the slide. And so oftentimes with weatherization, buildings lose energy in two ways, through conduction and through convection. And so they use this analogy of the jacket and the sweater. And the insulation would be used to address conductive heat loss, and the air sealing would be the convective heat loss. And so that's a big part of what we do with our contractors and our financing and our products, is to really help people. We have really old housing stock in the state of Vermont. So it's a real big part of what we do, is the weatherization end of things. You can go ahead and advance the slide. And so if you were in that situation, you could call us, and we would be, you could back up one slide. And so here's that if you call us, right, and we'll get some information about you and your home. If you are income qualified, we will send you in the direction of the weatherization services. And we also have this virtual home energy visit program where you can go on to our website and sign up for a time slot up to 90 minutes. And in essence, you have a virtual home energy visit where we connect to you via the smartphone or via a computer. And we actually we work through your house, and we make recommendations, and we, really tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly from a sort of third party point of view. And then we talk about, how you might move to the next step, how you could connect with us and our contractors and our incentives and our financing. Or, just how you could go to loan, and we have some do-it-yourself videos and programs as well. So you can advance the slide. And so when renters, we work with renters as well. And if they are in fact income eligible and they have the approval of their homeowner, the person who's renting the house, then they're eligible for weatherization services. They're also eligible for weatherization service to our home performance, the do-it-yourself stuff as well. And then building performance is really the home performance program, which is existing homes, weatherizing existing homes. But sometimes what was a residential building sometimes has a commercial application. And if it's an old 2-story Victorian in Bristol and they put a cell phone store downstairs, then that would be looked at a little bit differently. That would go through the building performance side. Similar type work scopes, wood frame buildings, but it has a bit of a commercial application as well. So this slide sort of shows the different projects that are out there, and some that are more relevant to people taking upon themselves, like weatherizing your windows or exterior doors, pipe insulation. And then there's the more comprehensive or skill set projects, and that's where you would be reaching out to a qualified contractor. You can advance the slide. We do a lot with heat pumps. You can advance the slide. And so once they're electrical, so that's sort of what we're in the game for, electrical utility. And they become very relevant because they're very efficient. You can actually advance the slide. And they're very efficient, and they're very applicable to, sometimes people don't necessarily get this, but in this cold climate and in existing residential houses, there is a real application for these if, people sort of know where they're headed and know what, their limitations are. And we do ductless heat pumps, which is sort of what you're seeing there. And we do hybrid heat pump hot water heaters and air to water heat pumps and centrally ducted heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. So you can advance the slide. So this, as it unfolds, is sort of the model of a heat pump. Usually there's another piece. There it goes. Electricity on the left, 1 kW in, electricity on the right, heat output 3 kW. So that's sort of why heat pumps are so efficient. And over on the left, the heat source up top in the blue would be the outside unit. It takes that air, drives it through the compressor. The material travels through, it gives heat off on the other side, the heat's out into the building, and then goes back through the process again. So this is really, this is the refrigerant cycle, and it's sort of mojo to some people, but this is a very simplified version of how that works. So you can advance the slide. So this is a hybrid heat pump hot water heater. And what they do is they build a heat pump into the top of an electric resistance hot water heater. And that allows you to, if need be, dial in some electric resistance to assist the heat pump if in fact the location where the heat pump is cooler, maybe in the wintertime, so it's harder for it to function in cooler temperatures, the heat pump mode. Um, or if the demand is just so great, you can't keep up with it. And the heat pump mode is very efficient, but has the slowest recovery time. So it allows you, because it's a hybrid, to dial in some electric resistance to add to the sort of performance and to meet your needs. And typically they have a little keypad on there and you can just move it in and out of the different modes depending on what your needs are. So it's a hybrid, but it is mostly heat pump, very efficient. Really the go-to right now for a hot water replacement, as long as you have a full basement. They're rather challenging in slab-on grades or buildings with crawl spaces because there's no place to sort of put them. But they actually duct these things now. And they sort of say, hey, if we don't have a basement to put this thing in and we have to put it upstairs, is there a place where we can draw some, the way the heat pump works is it draws in the existing air that's around it, squeezes some energy out of it, uses that energy to do something, in this case, make hot water, and then it delivers cool air, it spits cool air out on the other side of it. So in a house that doesn't have a basement, if there's a place in the house where we can draw some warm air from that people won't complain about, and deliver the exhaust cool air where people won't complain about, then they actually put these in houses now that don't have full basements. And so you might take the air out of the hallway and you might spit it into the laundry room and no one will complain too much. So that's sort of where they're going with the hybrid heat pump hot water heaters in buildings that don't have basements. Next slide, please. So wood heat, right? You can go ahead and advance the slide. So and this, I guess this unfolds. There we go. So wood heat is, we think wood heat is pretty good because theoretically 75% of your energy dollars stays in the state of Vermont if you heat with wood. Pellets are local. They make them in Vermont. They make them in Quebec. They make them in New Hampshire. They're automated, these systems. Wood is one of the most stable fuel prices for the last 50 years, be it cord wood or pellets. And so, and these are very efficient. The pellet is a very efficient way to burn wood simply because it's a very consistent piece of fuel, very similar moisture content. And so that's really some of the reasons why these pellet stoves have become very popular. And you can advance the slide. And here's sort of your two choices, pellet stove on the right, and then actually the pellet boiler or furnace on the left. They do bulk pellet deliveries now. You have to get the bins, you have to have places for it. But so it's really become a more, I guess the other thing is oftentimes if you talk to people who burn cordwood, oftentimes people are sort of squawking because the person who's supposed to bring the firewood is sort of late 2-3 weeks out and you're trying to get the stuff dry for the following season. So the pellet is something that is really accessible. You know, if I call Larrabee's Building Supply, they'll deliver me a ton of pellets like tomorrow. So that's one of the other benefits of these. Next slide, please. So smart thermostat, you can go to the next slide. So they're programmable, they're adjustable, they sort of pay attention to what's going on in your house and respond to it. And they're weather responsive. They have outside temperature gauges that sort of anticipate cold snaps coming through and they adjust accordingly. And it's a really good way to reduce energy loss. I mean, you can do it yourself if you're so inclined to turn a thing up and turn a thing down, but these things are really quite sophisticated. And they've become pretty, you know, a lot of what's going on now in energy is, you know, we figured out how to make houses better and we figured out how to make equipment more efficient. And now we're looking to controls. And so how to control this energy that comes in and out of buildings. Next slide, please. So I guess, yeah, next slide, please. So we do, and you can go to the next slide as well. We actually do a couple of pilot programs that have to do with healthy homes. And what you're really talking about is there's sort of 8 principles to healthy homes, 7 or 8, depending upon who you're talking to. But one is to keep it clean, and one is to keep it dry, and one is to keep it non-cluttered, and to keep volatile organic compounds and pesticides out of the way, and to have temperature, good temperature control. And so it turns out that a lot of the things that go along with healthy homes are the same things that are the result of good weatherization. And so that's sort of the idea here between the healthy homes connection and the weatherization. Next slide, please. So this is the whole idea of financing. You can go to the next slide. We actually offer, we buy down the interest loans on energy loans. And what we're really trying to do, here's a sort of an example of what we're talking about here. What we're really trying to do is get people into like a neutral cash flow position where the amount of money that the loan is requires offsets the fuel savings. But these are sort of some of the ideas that are going on here. And the thing that really point out here is it's both for weatherization and it's for equipment. So it's not necessarily if your house is well weatherized and you want to upgrade to some heat pumps or you want to go to wood heating systems, then these loan products would be available to that. You would have to work with the contractors in our network, but that's the idea behind these home energy loans. Next slide. So new construction, we have programs, we have contractors in our network who work on new construction. We have some incentives that we offer with those contractors. And we just have a wealth of knowledge for the last 20 years working in the new homes program, residential program. We do a conference every year, Better Building by Design. There's a lot of good information there. You can get access to all the different Better Building by Design presentations on our website. And so that's really how we get involved with new construction. Next slide. So I guess the point here is there's no, the sooner you get in the game, the better, right? Sometimes to do nothing, right, is worse. Sometimes to do nothing is really, doesn't really help you. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff going on here. So please feel free to reach out to us. You can go to the next slide. And this is sort of us, that 5990. We have a really good website. There's a lot of information on there as well. And so for the most part, I think there's one more slide that talks about things that, the Renewable Energy Vermont. These are other resources. The Drive Electric, the electric car, the genie's out of the bottle. All the car manufacturers are going there. We're seeing that as the home storage of the future is the electric car. And so that would be something that's very important. Whenever I talk to people about solar, I always say, hey, if you talk to the solar installers, make sure you talk a little bit about where the electric car is going to go. Do we factor that into the loads right now or into the design? And then once again, the commuting thing. Once again, transportation is really the elephant in the room. So thank you very much. And I'll listen to Eric.
All right, awesome. I'm just going to do a quick peek in the chat to make sure that there's not any questions that we haven't gone over already. So we do have a question about radiant
air to
flow.
water. Yeah, air to water. Yeah. So air to water is where you're using outside air to transfer it to a water system, and it's a hydronic system typically. Right now, the air to water systems really work okay or really work well with radiant systems. The output temperature of radiant is like 110 degrees, and those heat pumps can do that. When you go to the standard baseboard that a lot of people have in their homes, the output temperature for that equipment is 165 degrees. And right now the heat pumps are really, I think the technology is headed there. The Europeans have heat pumps that can do 165 degree output. We don't have them in this country yet. They use a different refrigerant. So it's only a matter of time before it happens. But right now, the air to water systems that we're seeing, and we actually incentivize them on our website, are mostly the radiant heating systems because of the low output temperature. But they're out there. It's a really good way to do it is the air to water with the radiant slabs.
Perfect. All right, it looks like we have another question regarding baseboard hot water systems as backup. Can a heat pump be configured to use the same hot water system?
So once again, we'd be talking about air to water, right? And not air to air, which is sort of what the mini splits are, using outside air and delivering warm air inside. When you go to the air to water, which I think is what the question is, having to do with radiant baseboard. Once again, because that output temperature, the radiant baseboard at 165 is much higher than radiant floor is right now. And it can be done with buffer tanks and stuff, but it's rather complicated. And right now, the equipment that we have available to us, the air to water heat pumps, aren't really designed to do that really high output temperature of 165, which is what baseboard is. I guess the other question with that is, I'll be totally honest with you. I am not a heating contractor. And so, but I can give you the generic, what we sort of think and see. But there could be more, there are people out there who have better horsepower for that sort of stuff than I do. So I would actually encourage whoever asks that question to either go to our website and look at the HVAC contractors who are on there, or go to a well-known contractor who works in that field and really quiz them about that. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Eric, it looks like it's your time for your portion of the webinar. Are you ready?
Yeah, thank you, Lily.
Awesome. Here you go.
Perfect. So you've weatherized your home, purchased an electric car, and you're looking to move your home towards being even more efficient. So what's next? Moving on. Green Mountain Solar specializes in the provisioning of renewable technologies to homeowners and businesses. And today we're going to walk through some of the basics of solar, the GMS solar process, how some of our renewable technologies function, and how we can make our homes more efficient. Moving on, Lily. Thank you. GMS is the largest independently owned solar company here in Vermont. So we specialize in efficient renewable technologies such as photovoltaic solar panels, backup battery systems, single zone heat pumps, and electric vehicle charger installations. So we're based out of South Burlington, Vermont, and all of our installers, electricians, and solar advisors, like myself, we're all in-house. So moving on. So the solar basics. Really at its core, photovoltaic solar panels convert sunlight that's abundant all around us into electricity that is usable in our homes, businesses, and utility grid. Regarding solar power and the utility grid, it would be good to touch on net metering for a moment. So net metering is the crediting mechanism that describes how your solar array would interact with your home and the utility grid. And given the climate here in Vermont, there's a good portion of the year in which, the days are short, sun's low in the sky, there's a good amount of snow. So only about 10 to 15% or so of your annual solar production comes during the deep winter months. So what we try to do with net metering is we size your solar array to overproduce in the spring, summer, and fall. And when you overproduce, you'll, 1, power all of your home's loads in real time, but 2, send a good amount of energy back into the grid where the utility company will give you credit for it. So these energy credits can be used during the evenings when the sun isn't out, but especially during the winters, which just based on where we are in the world, we're just going to produce a lot less solar energy. Conversely, you could also be what's known as off-grid. So let's say you were only powering your home off of a solar array, a large battery bank, and a home generator, rather than receiving power from the utility grid. However, as we start to electrify more of how we heat, cool, drive, and live our lives more broadly, we will require even more electricity, thus making solar, the utility grid, and net metering even more vital towards powering our lives. So jumping off, Lily. So now we're going to take a look at the GMS solar process. So if you're interested in diving deeper into solar and other types of efficient technologies, reach out. So if you only know a little bit, or if you've researched quite a bit, our friendly office team is happy to get the solar process started. If you did feel like learning more, we could schedule a free site visit with myself or one of the other solar advisors where we could help educate you and your families and help evaluate your home for a solar system. So if your preference was to not have us come out to your property, we could schedule what is known as a ballpark call, which is essentially, it's a phone conversation where we can do almost everything that we need to online. So following a site visit, we will send you a project proposal, which will outline, the panels and pricing, everything else. And once you get the proposal, you'll have plenty of time to ask questions and we can help explain everything to you. After which, if you were feeling comfortable and confident with going solar, you could sign what is known as a project agreement. So a project agreement is essentially like a more formal contract. And once a project agreement is signed, Green Mountain Solar will handle all the necessary permits and project development. So come the time of your installation, everything can go smoothly. So after this, once your solar batteries, heat pumps, or electric vehicle chargers have been installed and commissioned, so everything's on and working as it does, your solar advisor will come back out to your home, answer any questions that you may have, walk you through your new renewable energy systems, and ask you about your experience. So jumping off, Lily. So what types of potential systems would we be installing at your home? In this next section, we will be touching on some of the renewable energy systems that we offer, all of which your solar advisor would be happy to dig into deeper detail during your site visit. So jumping off. Earlier we touched on the relation between solar and net metering. However, it would be good to give our solar panels and inverters a little bit more time to explain. So GMS is currently installing with two different types of solar panels. One is from a company called REC, R-E-C, and the other company is called Q-Cell, Q-Cell. So both types of solar panels are very energy dense and come from mainstays within the renewable energy industry. So REC has been in the industry for over 25 years, and Q-Cell has been in the industry for over 23. So one of the main reasons that we like working with panels from REC and Q-Cell is because of their warranties. So both panel manufacturers offer 25-year product warranties. So say 17 years down the line, one of your panels did happen to malfunction. Both REC and Q-Cell would give you a brand new panel for free, and they don't prorate any of the costs. Both REC and Q-Cell also offer 25-year efficiency warranties. Essentially, that's the guaranteed energy output over time. And REC guarantees that their panels will be at least 92% as efficient at year 25 as compared to the end of year 1. And Q-Cell guarantees that their panels will be at least 86% as efficient at year 25 as compared to the end of year 1. So while REC is considered a little bit more of our premium panel, Q-Cell provides an incredibly reliable solar module nonetheless. And by using these different types of solar panels, we can match the right system to the right budget and the right set of goals for going solar. So in terms of microinverters, it may be beneficial to touch on another basic building block of solar, the type of electricity that solar modules produce. So the type of electricity produced from solar panels is DC or direct current electricity. And the type of electricity used in our homes and the utility grid is AC, alternating current electricity. So essentially within the solar ecosystem, we need something to do this DC to AC electrical conversion. Green Mountain Solar's preference by far is using what are known as micro inverters. So essentially each individual panel will get its own inverter. They're about the size of a clipboard and they're bolted right to the back of each panel, either up on your roof or down on the ground. And by using microinverters, we essentially allow each individual panel to produce at its maximum power peak independently of one another. So this can make your solar array less susceptible to the impacts of shading and east-west orientation and even snow. So in addition to those aspects of the microinverter systems, they also allow you to monitor the real-time production of your system, which honestly takes out a lot of the guesswork when it comes to going solar. Really, the only major maintenance that we ask you to do is just check an app on your phone or on your computer, and you'll get a real layout of where all your panels are and just shows what they're producing. So these Enphase microinverters come with their own 25-year product warranties as well, and they pair incredibly well with both REC and Q-Cell panels for both roof mount and ground mount applications. Jumping off, Lily. Thank you. So you've gone solar, but the recent series of big storms here in Vermont have made you a lot more interested in securing your home against grid outages. So How do backup battery systems work? Backup battery systems function quite similarly to home generators, except rather than relying on fossil fuels, oftentimes the only input for battery systems is just the sun. So if the grid goes down and you do have a solar array paired with a backup battery system, you will instantaneously form a sort of microgrid in which the lights don't flicker, you don't need to reset clocks, and you can instantaneously start powering the majority of your home's loads during an outage. So adding battery backup really allows you to extend the usefulness of your solar array to 365 days a year, adds quite a few additional bells and whistles to your renewable energy systems, and allows for you to keep more of your own solar energy on site, empowering your own home. So jumping off. I know that Bruce touched on heat pumps a little bit earlier, so I'll try not to be too repetitive. But I want everyone for a moment to imagine like a fireplace or just a classic wood stove. Essentially, as we all know, we're putting logs of wood and kindling and burning them in order to put heat into our homes. So while this type of heating is widespread, and as Bruce alluded to, there are definitely more efficient ways to do it. The ways that we have been burning wood is quite inefficient, to be honest. So by burning wood, we are losing some potential energy to smoke, ash, and other inefficiencies during the combustion process. However, with heat pumps, there's actually no real direct burning of fuels. We're simply moving idle heat from the outside air into our homes, and they kind of function similar to how a refrigerator works, except rather than removing heat from inside of our refrigerators to help keep our food cold, heat pumps can move heat from the outside air into our homes to keep them warm. So heat pumps circulate refrigerant between an indoor unit. Maybe your neighbor has one. You might have seen one in a restaurant. They're getting more widespread now here in Vermont. But heat pumps circulate refrigerant between an indoor unit and an outdoor compressor. And heat pumps can also reverse the flow of this refrigerant during the summers. So essentially, we would be removing heat from our homes and placing it outside in order to keep them more cool and comfortable. So while heat pumps are incredibly efficient, as Bruce touched on earlier with the kilowatt hour sort of snapshot, heat pumps are also fully electric, which means that they pair perfectly with a home solar system. Jumping off again, Lily. As one of my final points, electric vehicles, EVs for short, have become more and more popular here in Vermont. Just last year, many of us went to the gas pump and saw prices of nearly $5 a gallon. So rather than relying on fossil fuels that are oftentimes coming from overseas, we can confidently depend on solar power generated in our own backyards to power our vehicles. There are lots of great federal and state incentives in the works. And once you have picked out your perfect electric vehicle, Green Mountain Solar would love to be your chosen EV charger installer. Throughout the state of Vermont and the US as a whole, we are beginning to see electrification become more and more prominent. So, and as we begin to electrify more of how we live our lives, efficient technologies such as heat pumps, backup battery systems, and electric vehicles begin to make more and more sense when paired with solar. So there's always a sweet spot when it comes to weatherization, solar, and investments in these efficient technologies. And our friends at Efficiency Vermont and all of us here at Green Mountain Solar are here to help. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. We are going to go into our Q&A section right now. I already see some questions that have been dropped in the chat, so I'll just start reading off a couple. Whether or not Bruce or Eric, either one of you want to take any individual question, I'll let you guys decide that. So to begin with, I see our first question here. We have someone from Southern Vermont, Halifax. Eric, does GMS do business down there?
We do indeed. We would love to come out and see you in Halifax. In terms of scheduling and everything, I would recommend, just giving us a call at the number down below or just shooting us an email. But yeah, we would love to come out.
Looks like we've got another one for you, Eric. How far out are you scheduling for installations of residential homes?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We are currently booking for installations themselves springtime. I'd say probably about 3 to 4 months out. There's a couple of other details that could elongate that process, but generally it's about 3 or so months after a signed project agreement.
Awesome. Looks like this one's for you, Bruce. It was asked during your presentation. My apologies, I must have missed it. So I have a Nest Smart thermostat connected to a boiler and a Samsung ductless mini split system. Do you know of a good way to have the Nest control the heat pump?
Well, not offhand. I'm sure it's capable of doing that. It probably has the ability, but I'm not. So typically what's happening there is that you want the heat pump to be running when it's most appealing, when, sort of in the shoulder season, spring and the fall. And then typically what happens is you're defaulting to the fossil fuel when it gets really cold out. And we have a little tool, it's called a crossover tool, that we try to calculate that. And there's some different decisions, what are you paying for fossil fuel? What's the efficiency of the system? What's the COP on the heat pump? But I don't know the Nest that well, but it would not surprise me at all. The Nest is pretty amazing. I mean, it's interesting. When I talk to people my age and I talk about the Nest, they go, ooh, that's really creepy. I don't really want somebody. And then I talk to younger people that say, oh, that's the greatest thing in the world. I mean, the first thing you do with a Nest is you program in your zip code, so it knows what the heating degree days are. So I'm sure it's sophisticated enough to figure out that sort of crossover. But once again, that crossover is a moving target because it's based on what you paid for the fossil fuel. Obviously, the equipment that you're installing, the performance of the heat pump, and what the AFUE is on the heating system. But sort of the missing link there is what's the current fuel price, and when are you wanting to swap from one to the other, right? I know some of the heat pumps, like some of the ducted centrally air source heat pumps, you can actually buy an electrical heating coil. Mitsubishi has it. The other ones do as well. And it inserts into the system, and it has a communication with the outside temperature that says, hey, listen, at this point in time, it's more advantageous to us to switch over to electric resistance to support the heat pump in the colder outside temperatures. So, Mitsubishi has it already for their systems because they know they don't perform well, and they actually shut themselves off when it gets really, really cold out. And so it automatically makes that transition. So I'm pretty confident the Nest can do that, but I'm not the person who would be the be all in it. I guess I'd contact Nest about that. Sorry.
It looks like we have a question from Janet. If you're still with us, it looks like a pretty specific question about your system and the numbers that you want to run for a battery backup system. I would say, to answer something so specific like this, please, give our office a call or email us at the email below, and we would be happy to have one of our solar advisors talk to you specifically about your home and what your needs would need to be. Moving on to our next question. How does the efficiency of microinverters compare to macroinverters?
Yeah, so I can provide a little clarity on this one. I think by macroinverters, you might be referring to string inverters. So a string inverter is just one large central hub in which all the DC to AC conversion is done. We've previously done work with string inverters, and ultimately microinverters, through a decentralized means of producing their own energy, is just a better way to go, especially to, I'll give you an example. If you had a ground mount system that is, very far from someone's house, because each panel is automatically outputting AC energy off, you would be transporting AC from the array itself over to your home rather than potentially DC. And as we talked about earlier, I mean, AC power is what's in our grid, and that is so that way it can travel longer distances without losing as much energy. So in terms of the specific efficiencies on a one-to-one, I'd probably want to confirm that it was a string inverter and which one, but ultimately microinverters are really popular nowadays.
Perfect. We also have a question here about ground source heat pumps. Just kind of maybe a broad overview of, the system, water temps, cost, just a little overview of, I think Bruce, maybe you might be able to make notion of this one.
Sure. So typically there's two sort of types of ground source heat pumps, either a well, which is drawing energy out of the temperature of water in the well, or a loop system where they bury some looping in the soil, and it's using the ambient temperature of the soil as the heat source. And typically you're looking, when they do the sizing, you're looking at a ground temperature in our neck of the woods of 55, 56 degrees. And then you're, sending a medium through that, and then you're drawing energy out of that at a heat exchanger. One of the things about the ground source heat pumps is you're not faced with that drop in performance or actually even turning themselves off, because like an air source heat pump would be, because there is no variation in that temperature of the ground source, the soil. So that's one of the advantages. They're generally a rather expensive investment, because you have to really, you're either doing an additional well, or you're doing the mostly what we see are well applications. We actually incentivize closed loop systems in water systems, and it's so much a ton, and ton is 12,000 BTUs. It's on our website. But that being said, we're starting to see more and more of these ground source systems, because there's no fluctuation in the temperature of the ground. And so it's a very constant heat source to work off of. And typically you can do hot water, and you can do more than one output temperature from the ground source heat pump. You can do radiant heating, you can do baseboard, you can do more with that than you can an air to air heat pump. And so yeah, it's a pretty viable, but once again, it's more on the expensive side. But the source of energy is very consistent, unlike the air source heat pumps. So, and it's interesting. There's a company over in New York State, I think it's called Acorn, or I guess it's Dandelion. And so they have really figured out a way. They have a very specific type of house that they work with, and it's a well system. And they have really a nice system, ground source heat pump system. That they've fine-tuned. They're not in Vermont, because I hear a lot of people complain about they can't get them to come to Vermont, but they really work with a very specific type of house, and they've been able to scale it up. And so I think it's one of the things that you're going to see more in the future. You see it in other parts of the country, but not so much in this part of the country. But it's on its way. A lot of this technology is really developing rapidly, and so oftentimes it's sort of like stay tuned, because it's only a matter of time before it becomes relevant to our housing stock.
Awesome. So we've got another one. The question is, what is the lowest outside temperature to run a heat pump? And can you install a heat pump in a finished basement?
I'm happy to jump in on this, and then maybe Bruce, you could share your thoughts. It definitely depends on the type of heat pump. So the Mitsubishi heat pumps that we're installing with right now, they're sort of the Hyperheat series, the newest edition, and they can heat down to -22, I believe, an outside temperature. However, heat pump efficiencies and their heating capacity, somewhere around 0 degrees starts to dip down a little bit. So while they'll still be providing you heat well below that, it would also just really depend on what type of heat pump that you have.
The other thing I would say to that is, whenever you look at the performance of a heat pump, if you look up the specs on a heat pump, oftentimes they'll give it to you 2 different outside temperatures. I know when we do heat load calculations through this piece of software, REMRate, they make you put in an import for both 17 degrees outside temperature and 47 degrees outside temperature. And when you look at the output of those different, you sort of recognize how that falls off as the outside temperature gets colder. the other piece is they're modulating, right? They're not just, I mean, if you need 10 pieces of energy, you don't just buy a unit that gives 10. You buy a unit that gives between 7 and 13. And that's part of the reason that they're so efficient. When they're not needing to be a 10, they're actually acting like a 7. So they're more efficient. And that's how they can also continue to run as the temperatures get colder, because they can modulate up to the higher output as well. And so those are some of the factors that in all the different, there's a website called NEEP, N-E-E-P, and they do a really nice job of showing the different equipment out there and how it performs and that sort of stuff.
Perfect. Another question we have is, what is the prevailing wisdom on spray foam insulation?
Well, spray foam certainly has its place. It's changed a lot over the years. Depending on what there's concerns about anything and everything out there. One of the things about the spray foams is they have very high, when they measure how well a material insulates, they do it in R value. And they rate all the different building materials in a per inch R value. So wood, for instance, is R1 per inch. So if you had a 1 inch thick door, it's R1. But the spray foam is R6.5 per inch. So it's on the really high end of the R value. And there are actually some spray foams out there. I think Demalock has one that's like 7.5 per inch. So oftentimes there are places where spray foam is really the go-to because it has a high R value. And if you don't have a lot of room to put insulation into, then oftentimes they look at that product. Some places like stone foundations, that's really the go-to product as well, because they spray it onto this very undulating surface, and it adheres to the surface. You could never put a rigid foam board or a fibrous piece of insulation against a stone foundation and get it to perform very well. Historically, they've been concerned with the global warming but it's the blowing agents. You know, typically 2-part foam, spray foam is the foam, and then there's the agent that carries the foam to the surface of where it's going to be applied. And they've made those blowing agents better now. So the global warming potential is much better than it used to be. The other limitations with spray foam is they can only spray so much foam in one pass. And so if you want a larger R value and a thicker amount of, then there's some additional labor costs because you have to come around a second time to get to a deeper amount of space. So it's a product that's certainly been around for a while. Some people have sensitivities, but some people have sensitivities to all kinds of different things. So there's no real definitive answer as to what the current, outlook is for spray foam. It's certainly a product that's been here for a while. It's here to stay. It certainly has its attributes in certain situations, but it's certainly not the only answer to insulating.
Awesome, thank you. Looks like we have one last question, Bruce. Looks like a question for your opinion. So I had a quote for a pellet broiler over 30K, which seems quite a long payback. The price has included a credit. He seems to be looking at purchasing a 95% plus boiler. What are your thoughts?
So I'm assuming the 95%, that's a propane boiler, and in comparison to the pellet boiler, I'm assuming. I don't know, the pellet boiler, is a pellet boiler 95%? I guess that would be my question. Usually they're down in the high 80s, but they are, so 30 grand with the incentives. I think what is 30% federal tax credit? I know Efficiency Vermont has some credits. So there's no doubt that it's an expensive investment. I don't know much about, is it a straight swap out where you're going to use the existing distribution system? Is it a new setup? And once again, I guess my condolences go out to you when you see a quote that sort of magnitude. But I don't, I would not weigh, I wouldn't throw the heating contractor under the bus. And once again, I'm not really, using the existing system, just the boiler. Yeah. So it sounds like it's a hydronic system and you're going to tie into what's already there. Yeah. Yeah. Once again, it is a lot of money. There's no doubt about that. I guess, yeah. I don't really have a comment to be totally honest with you. It's sort of out of my expertise, but I certainly, my condolences for sure, but I'm not trying to sound, off the, cuff or something, but it's not really the pricing of this sort of stuff without sort of understanding what's going on there, I would not be good to comment on that, to be honest with you.
Bruce, do you know of any resources that maybe you could direct them to that may be better?
Yeah, well, you could certainly go to the Efficiency Vermont website. I know we have a couple people in-house who are really sort of pellet, aficionados. That's what they sort of know them in and out. And so I would certainly call customer service. And I guess the other thing is, I'm not sure where this heating contractor came from. If you go to our website, there's a button on there that says find a contractor. And the first question is it weatherization or is it HVAC? Then you would steer to the HVAC answer. It would ask you for your zip code. It would bring forward a list of contractors in your neighborhood who work with us in that realm. So that if that wasn't the source, okay, well, so I guess that would be the source of the people who actually, do this professionally. You don't necessarily have to work within our network. You can go outside of our network. But that would be the best information I can really extend to you.
Awesome. Well,
Lily,
looks like.
Sorry, one quick thing. I noticed that we didn't cover one short question. Someone asked if you could install a heat pump in a finished basement. I would say generally yes. It really depends on the application. And then second, I'm actually from the southern Vermont area, and I'm just realizing that we are in northern Vermont. So Halifax might originally be a little bit outside of our orbit. With that said, I'd still recommend to the person who asked that question about us going down to southern Vermont just to give us a call. We could chat, maybe answer some questions, but I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Well, awesome. Looks like that was all of our questions. Again, thank you both, Eric and Bruce, for being here today, and thank you for everyone who attended. Just a reminder, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar for you guys to view at your convenience. And if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to give us a call at Green Mountain Solar or give Efficiency Vermont a call as well. And with that, I will stop the recording and sign off. Thanks, everybody.